Alright, so our first big project in our line unit, our first element of art, is we're going to be doing a Zentangle. This idea of a Zentangle has come really popular recently with all the coloring books that have been coming out that has lots of little tiny patterns in there, and I'm going to really slow it down to show you guys the simplest way to accomplish a Zentangle. So first things first, what it is, Zentangles are just big shapes, like big triangles, half circles, diamonds that we see in this picture, some hearts in the corner, and in each shape, there's a different pattern. So whether it's a long rectangle with stars in it, whether it's zigzag lines or curly cues, whatever it is, each big shape has a little pattern inside each of them. That's what makes it a Zentangle. They're really soothing and relaxing and satisfying because everything should be nice and perfect and really filled up and look really cool. If you notice on the right, here's one of those coloring books that I was kind of talking about with the peace sign, is that bigger shape. And they broke them down into little patterns over and over again. It's really strong black and white. You can add color, but it has a lot of contrast. And contrast just means the state of being strikingly different from something else. So that yin and yang sign, or this red apple in a sea of green apples, right? It's something that our eye is totally drawn to. It's the complete opposite of everything else, and it makes our eye really catch our attention. And this picture on the bottom left is done by M.C. Escher, which we will talk about late in our last project of the school year. But he did a lot of these different things, having really stark differences, a really light white and a really intense blue, to make him stand out and get that pattern going. So what pattern is just one design repeating itself. So if you have a Nike logo on your shirt, maybe just one, that doesn't mean you have a pattern on your shirt. You have a logo. But if you have a whole bunch of Nikes all over covering the place, that's when it's a pattern. It's when it's repeating. So the eyelashes here, even though that one eye's open, one eye's blinking, it's still repeating both of those steps over and over. In the middle picture is another one of M.C. Escher's tessellations, which we will actually practice later on in the year. And he does the same thing. He does really good at repeating those little lizards, and they fit in perfectly over and over. Same even on the right side where there's a bunch of triangles going in, and even the designs in it are nice and repeated until the whole page is filled up. So there's some really easy steps when you're doing Zentangles, and the first step is to think about what you want your big shape to be. So we have a big artichoke on the left. We have some balloons on the bottom right, or you can keep it totally abstract and just do some, how this person did on the top right, they did some zigzag lines. But in each line, there needs to be a different new pattern. So first step is you're making sure you're having your big shapes first. Second step is in between each big shape, even in the artichoke, there's little tiny leaves coming off of each of them. Each little leaf on there has a different pattern, which is the whole entire point. And lastly, that third step would either be adding color or covering it in Sharpie to get that really strong contrast. So here's a few that are done, and there's some that aren't true Zentangles here, but there's some that are. If you notice, the one in the middle has all these squares repeating over and over and over, which is a really cool design, but they did not have a new pattern in each square, so that doesn't make it a true Zentangle. It could be as simple and abstract as the one on the right, where they just did a bunch of circles. And even where those circles are overlapping, there's different patterns. If you would like to go a more representational route, there's a bunch of really cool ideas that you can do. Just choose one of your favorites, like BB-8 over here, and inside each of his controls, he has different patterns. And same in this wave on the left. Notice it's just one big shape, but they broke it down into different patterns over and over again into those shapes. Here's another two options about more representational work. Keeping even the girl on the right with just her hair, but the rest of her body is a regular human type body, but her hair is still in that Zentangle form. Okay. I have a bunch of patterns because I know it gets kind of hard to remember what you want to do. I have a bunch of options for you guys, so you can have those up. And at the end, I want you to choose if you want to add color, if that's going to help your piece, or if you just want it black and white. What I really love about this one on the left is that there's really thick lines versus really, really thin lines, which is adding that contrast that's really important. Okay, so think about that when you're doing it. So that's for my level 1s. For level 2, since you've already done this project, you're going to be doing optical illusions. If you haven't had my class before, then you are finishing your Zentangle and you don't have to listen anymore. But for level 2s, you're going to be doing an optical illusion of your choice completely. So here's a few examples, and I know they look really intimidating, but for example, the one on the left, it is just a checkerboard, and they really use the colors to help make it look like an optical illusion. Otherwise, it's just a sun inside of little checkerboards, and I can help you guys with that, of course. On the right, which is that bulging sphere, or circle that you guys see, what they did to achieve that is they did a nice checkered background, and they did 2 lines frowning, which are going down, and 2 lines smiling, which are kind of curling up on the sides. And that's how they make it look bulging. It seems like it's really complicated and hard to do, but it's just simple line tricks like that and coloring that really helps. Here's a few examples kind of mixing those two. Same thing when you have repetition, it looks much better, just like the Zentangles do. And using a lot of bright contrast really trips our eye out. Even the student on the right who is doing shading, they shade really dark on the edges and really light down the middle with that highlight to make it look like those pieces or those half circles are really, really rounded on the piece. Okay. And lastly, here's another example. Again, this is totally up to you if you want to do black or white. If you would like to do color, it kind of depends on the illusion that you're going for. But I have a bunch of examples and I'll help you conquer those if you need it. If you have any questions, please email me on School Loop.